When I sat down to write this sermon, it was a month ago, and there was about a month ago, and there was at least a foot of snow outside. The actual date was February 24th, but it felt a lot more like February 44th. It had been an endless month of what felt like an endless winter. Personally, I didn't realize how much this isolated time of COVID had been affecting me. I didn't get how unsettled I was inside from being away from my loved ones, my family, my close friends, this long, cold, dark time, being indoors and away. Not until we had had a warm day at the end of February. And on that day, I met with one of my dearest friends. Her name is Joyce, and we went for a walk in the park. And Joyce has a ritual of feeding the squirrels, which she calls her customers. So we brought along peanuts to feed the squirrels, and we fed her customers, and we found a bench in the sunshine, and we just sat and talked. We spent 2 hours together there, and then we both went on our way. The next morning, I woke up feeling rejuvenated and hopeful that there is some life beyond this. It felt so good to be in contact with someone I love. But what felt also and very magical was to sit in the warm sunlight that I had been missing for so long. Yes, it was happening. The subtle light was returning to our northern hemisphere. And today, many of us are excited to be turning our clocks ahead, which we did this morning, or we'd all be late or early for this service. And we will have an extra hour of sunlight at the end of our day. So what is this yearning for sunlight? Why does the sun make us feel better, happier, more joyful? As far back as the Greek physician Hippocrates, people believed that the changing seasons affected our health. They were aware that something happened to us physically. And scientists today, they agree. They've established a direct connection between sunlight and our brain chemistry, specifically serotonin. The more time we spend indoors these days, being on our computers, and especially with COVID and a winter, the more we are profoundly affected by a lack of serotonin. Higher levels of serotonin correlate with better moods, feelings of satisfaction. Lower levels of serotonin are directly linked to depression and anxiety. And an Australian study had realized or established that it didn't matter if it was summer or winter. It was the amount of light you were exposed to that made this change within people. Light does not just elevate our mood or state of mind. It also enables us to see more clearly. Light is one of the most universal and fundamental symbols for all religious traditions. It is the symbol that's typically assigned to that which we consider, or people consider, the divine. And every Sunday here, and in every UU congregation, we light our chalice. We bring the light into our service, into our worship. Radhanath Swami, I don't know if anybody's ever heard of him. He is the guru leader of the Bhakti order, and I just completely adore him. He shares that at times we take for granted the light of life. He says that is until we are surrounded by darkness. And it is then that we look for the light, and we really appreciate that that light is there. So if we're going to talk about the light, we must also talk about the shadow or the darkness, since they have meaning only in relation to one another. And we'll see in all the world's sacred art from the beginning of time, the sun and the moon are often pictured together. All things on earth are a mixture of darkness and light. But when we idolize things as totally good or condemn the other as totally bad, we get ourselves in trouble. We rejuvenate in the darkness. We create in the darkness. We grow roots in the darkness. We give life from our dark wombs. We close our eyes in meditation and enter the darkness to find ourselves again. And the roots of trees and plants are just as essential to its growth and its existence as the sunlight on its leaves. To be fully human is to live in both shadow and light. There have been times in my life where I have had a real imbalance between light and shadow. My mother was a lovely woman, creative, refined, intelligent, and gracious. She had a kidney disease, which left her in pain pretty much most of her life. And aside from this physical illness, there was also a darkness that she carried. The catalyst for her suffering and this darkness and depression that she carried was that her mother had died when she was 8. She was completely traumatized by this, and she never received the psychological care to help her through the darkness that engulfed her. And in turn, that same darkness engulfed all of us. When I became an adult and left home, I stayed close to my parents. And I became a person deeply interested in spirituality. I lived with such a bright light, though, that I did not allow the space for myself or my loved ones to express or experience their darkness, their shadow, their grief, their challenges, their suffering. I lived only in the light. And sometimes when you do that, you may negate real feelings that are sincere and part of your experience. And often ministers or people that are involved in spiritual circles might call this spiritual bypass, bypassing the rough stuff and only staying in the rainbows and butterflies of spirituality. There are both, right? There's something to it all. Somehow there is an invitation in our lives to find a balance, to dance between the light and shadow of life. Susie Kazan shares this following thought in her book, Part Sun and Part Moon. Everybody has a bit of the sun and moon in them. Everybody has a bit of man, a bit of woman, a bit of animal in them, darks and lights in them. Everyone is part of the connected cosmic system, part earth and sea and wind and fire, some salt and dust swimming in them. We all have a universe within ourselves that mimics the outside universe. None of us are just black or white or never wrong or always right. No one exists without polarities. Everyone has good and bad forces in them, against them, and within them. Welcome darkness. Don't be afraid of it or deny it. Darkness brings relief from the blinding sun, the scorching heat from exhausting labor. The night signals permission to rest, to be with our loved ones, to conceive new life, to search our hearts, to remember our dreams. The dark of winter is a time of hibernation in which seeds grow in the dark, fertile earth. The words black and dark don't need to be destroyed or ignored, only balanced and reclaimed in their wholeness. The words white and light don't need to be destroyed or ignored, only balanced and reclaimed in their wholeness. Imagine a world that only had light or dark. We need them both. I realized last month, as I started in the beginning of this talk, to share with you that I was in a place of darkness. It was natural and it was difficult, but it's been difficult for us all in some way, I'm sure, during this last winter and this last year to this date. And actually a year ago, this Sunday was the first day that we did not have a service in person. It was the first day we went uh, we went we went home, and we didn't have services at all for a while. In a lifetime, we could never have expected to have gone through what we have gone through this past winter, this past year, and actually these last 4 years. We've been in a human global shadow with the pandemic, with and a national shadow under the presidency of he who shall not be named. I can only pray and hope that this has been a gestational period for humanity, and that we will awaken from this all a little more loving, a little more compassionate, and a lot more grateful. You may be familiar with a Native American fable about the two wolves that live within us. So I'm going to share this story. A grandmother, a First Nation grandmother, gathered her grandchildren around them to tell them a story. And the story was this. She shared that there is a battle going on inside every human, and it's going on inside you. It's the battle of two wolves, a shadow wolf and a light wolf. The shadow wolf represents the qualities of fear, anxiety, ego, inferiority, regret, suffering, false pride, self-pity, envy, pain, anger, rage. And the light wolf represents love, peace, humility, kindness, tranquility, serenity, generosity, trust, joy, gratitude, and all those. And the grandmother pauses, sips her tea, and turns silent, waiting for one of the wide-eyed children to take the bait. And finally, one says, "Grandma, which wolf wins?" And the grandmother responds, "Whichever one you choose to feed." Which wolf are you feeding today? Is it the light wolf or is it the dark wolf? It's said that how we respond to our difficulties or our shadow is what defines us, is what sets us on the trajectory of our lives. There is a light side and shadow side to most experiences we have, and we are always learning to seek harmony between the two if we want to live with more purpose, ease, freedom, and choice. If you were in a cave that had no light, and it was of complete darkness and you could see absolutely nothing, and you struck a match and it went on even for a split second and went out, you would never forget what you saw in that split second. It's an interesting analogy to consider with working with our light and darkness. Once we've found our place, once we've seen that light, it can never be obscured from us. We could forget about it, but it's there to recall. We know it and we've seen it. So as we go about our day, as we close this talk, let us consider that cave and the light. Is there shadow parts of you or from us that we need to offer light to? Is there shadow within us that we need to offer compassion to? Is there a light within us that we've forgotten, that we need to recall? May you see your light with more clarity, and may you offer your own shadow more compassion. And may that clarity and compassion within you connect out and trickle into the lives around you. May we all be vessels of healing for ourselves and for the world around us. May it be so.
If you like this video, please like us on YouTube, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and click on the bell to be notified whenever we post a new video. Thank you.